Hi, welcome back to Hourless Life, where we are overlanding, driving around the world. We are here today in a beautiful garden.
Museo ex Hacienda San Gabriel de Barrera.
Yeah, that's a mouthful. Anyway, what we're here to talk to you about today is the top questions that we get asked about overlanding or driving in Mexico.
We get a ton of questions about Mexico, but some of the questions we hear over and over again. So this video is to answer your top 10 questions that you ask us about what it's like to overland through Mexico. Our goal with this video is to knock down the barriers that people feel and have about overlanding through Mexico. So we want to answer your top questions and get you here to this amazing country that we love so much.
All right, the first question we're going to tackle is, which border crossing should I use to enter Mexico?
The most important thing you need to know
is that you need to know what's going on right now at those border crossings, so it changes.
So where do you go for updated information?
There are two places that we recommend. The first is a Facebook group called On the Road in Mexico. They have been instrumental in helping us get into Mexico for the past 3 years in a row that we've been here. And what we like to do is we like to find out from someone who just crossed what their experience has been, because the safety, security, and even construction or whatever, all of those things change. And so if I gave you advice on which border crossing to use today, it might not be accurate 6 months from now.
So we crossed in the Laredo area in 2019, and 2.5 years later in 2021, that was no longer the safest place to cross into Mexico. And so we ended up going out of our way to Eagle Pass, Texas, and that's where we crossed, because we got information from travelers who had just been through and knew what was going on the ground.
Now, don't be surprised, you guys, if you decide, okay, I'm going to cross into Mexico, and you cross into Mexico and you cross the border, and all of a sudden you're driving in Mexico and nobody stopped you. Nobody's inspected you. Nobody's asked you for paperwork. And all of a sudden you're like, holy crap, I'm in Mexico and I don't think I'm legal. You're not.
You're not.
You're not.
And so it's very important that even if nobody stops you, because probably nobody will, that you stop and you know where to go. You start with the Aduana office, ADUANA, and that's where you're going to get your personal visas. And after you have your personal visas, you go to the Banjercito, which is usually co-located. They're right there together. And that's where you get your temporary import permit, which is what makes your vehicle legal. All right, here's the full list of the documents that you need to get your visa and temporary import permit. You need everybody's passports and a copy of the driver's passport. You need the driver's visa and a copy of the visa, which means that somewhere in between getting your visas and getting your tip, you need to find a photocopy machine. It may be at the border or it may be at a store that's close to where you are.
If you watched our crossing the border into Mexico video, you'll see that that happened to us. We got our FMM, our tourist visa, and then when we went to go get our temporary import permit, we were told that we needed copies of that document, which they had just issued me. All right, so what happened was we got to the Banjercito, which is where you get your tourist visas and your temporary import permit for the vehicle. There's a crazy long line. So we've been in this building for like an hour and a half, hour and 20 minutes. And we find out we need copies. So I had to run out to this gas station, or literally run out to this gas station to go get copies. But I got the copies, so we're good to go.
You need your original vehicle registration and a copy of it. You need your driver's license. You need a Mexico insurance policy. Your US policy is not valid in Mexico. And you need either your vehicle title or a letter of permission from your lien holder saying that you have their permission to take the vehicle into Mexico.
Now, we know that's a long list of documentation that's required. I think we're going to try and put the list of those documents in the description of the video so that you have it available to you. But it's really important that you have these documents, you guys. Also, there have been more and more checks on tourists lately to make sure they have their documents with them. So even right now, as we're recording this in this beautiful garden, I have our documentation on my person in case somebody were to ask for that. So Make sure you're legal when you cross into Mexico. It's a beautiful country to enjoy. Let's get on to the next question.
The second question that we get asked a lot is, would an overlanding trip through Mexico be too challenging since I don't know Spanish?
All right, so the answer to that question is do not let your lack of knowledge of the Spanish language stop you from taking the journey of a lifetime.
There are tourists who cross the border every single day who don't know any Spanish and have an awesome visit.
The point is to get down here, and there are tools that can help you with the language barrier.
Definitely. So we recommend that you download the Spanish package from Google Translate. You can actually download it right to your phone, and that way you don't even need an internet connection to be able to use it. And there's even a voice to text feature.
There's also Duolingo, which is a great app where you can actually practice your Spanish before you come down. But here's the key. When you come to Mexico, the most important thing is to make an effort. All you have to do is learn a few key phrases like good morning, good afternoon, good evening, can you help me? I don't speak Spanish well. If you can learn those few key phrases, what happens is that the people of Mexico see that you're making an effort.
And that you respect them and their country and their language.
And it means everything to them, and they will go out of their way to help you. If language is the one thing that's been holding you back, don't let that hold you back any longer. And let's move on to question
number 3.
All right, so one of the most common questions we're asked is Mexico safe?
And I think the most important thing for us to keep in mind as we answer this question is that we remember the way that we felt before we had ever driven through Mexico. We remember the fear that we had and the uncertainty, and we were asking the exact same question. But what we had to learn before we came is to only listen to the people who had already driven through Mexico, not the people who hadn't, and certainly not the media.
No, definitely not the media. Look, is Mexico safe? The answer to that question is there are parts of it that are, and there are parts of it that aren't, pretty much like the United States. The big difference is that in the United States, for those of us who are from there, we kind of have like almost like a gut feeling, a place where we know, hey, that's probably not somewhere we want to go, or, you know, oh yeah, it's totally fine over in that part of town.
Right. And in Mexico, or really any foreign country, as a foreigner, you don't have that gut sense of what's safe and what's not safe. And so you can't differentiate, and the whole thing can feel unsafe because it's different.
The reality is that people down here, they pretty much do what we do back home. They go shopping and do their laundry, go to the grocery store, take care of their families. They work very hard. We're at a market right now, and people are walking around just living life. And that's pretty much how it is in Mexico, in the places that you want to go.
Right. And so what we do is we follow some really simple rules that we call best practices. Don't drive at night. And we actually try and get to camp every day by 3 p.m. when we're on the road and living in our Jeep. And that ensures that we're not driving after dark, because if the camp isn't what we thought it was and we have to find another place for whatever reason, we have time before sunset to bed down for the night.
Yeah. And talk to the locals, you know, talk to the folks who are here and ask them, say, hey, I'm thinking of going to this area or to this region. Do you have any thoughts on that?
What's the best route?
Anything I should know? They'll tell you. If you were telling me, hey, I am thinking of driving through Seattle and I want to go visit these areas, I might tell you that there are certain parts of town that you probably just don't want to be in at night, or not.
Or don't get an Airbnb in that neighborhood.
There are parts of the United States that you would never expect to be dangerous. There was a shooting at a King Soopers in Boulder, Colorado, that was tragic. We would never tell anyone not to go to Boulder, Colorado.
Or not to go grocery shopping in the United States.
Yeah. And the thing is, when it's something that's foreign, something that's different, it's almost easier to point a finger and say, oh yeah, that's really bad and that's really dangerous. But the reality is, they're just people down here, just like us, and they're beautiful people, hospitable and kind people. And this is a place worthy of exploration. So is Mexico safe? Yes and no. Just like pretty much every other corner of the world.
Another question we get asked all the time by overlanders who have put a lot of work into their vehicles is, will my overlanding vehicle stick out in Mexico? Will I draw unwanted attention?
I have to say, when we first came down, the very first time, I was nervous about that. I was like thinking, we're going to stand out like a sore thumb. We're going to be a target. Everybody's going to be looking at us. And honestly, it's not the case. If you actually go back and watch our videos where we're driving Dauntless around, you'll see that most folks are kind of disinterested. A few folks will look and point or make a comment, and I've had some folks stop and say, hey, can I take a picture of your Jeep or a really cool Jeep? And they'll ask me a couple questions, but that's about the exact same thing that happens in the US.
Right, so when it's attention, it's not bad attention, it's friendly attention. And in the United States, we couldn't even stop and get gas without someone stopping and wanting to talk to us. Here in Mexico, I kind of feel like people are a little bit more polite and give us a little more space. And
True.
so I think sometimes they might act disinterested just out of politeness.
Yeah, but from a fear standpoint or a security standpoint, safety standpoint, I don't really think we attract any more attention than we do in the United States. We've never, not once, felt that our security has been threatened while we've been here in Mexico. Now that could change because anything could happen at any time, anywhere. It is what it is. We are driving a pretty cool vehicle, and some people are interested and some people aren't. All right, so the next question on our list is, should I wait until my kids are older to overland through Mexico?
Okay, Caspian, if there are parents who are thinking about coming to Mexico, but they have young kids, should they wait until their kids are older to come to Mexico?
No, I don't think so.
You don't think so? How come?
Come as soon as you can.
Yeah, how come?
Because there's lots of other kids. Most of all, they would make best friends.
Have you made a lot of friends here in Mexico, Caspian?
Yep.
Caspian was 2 years old. He had just turned 2 the first time that we drove through Mexico, and we had an amazing experience. So our answer is unequivocally no.
No.
You should not wait. You should come as soon as you can. Mexico is such a family-friendly culture, as is all of Latin America. And so by traveling as a family, you break down a lot of barriers in a culture that loves children and loves families. There are so many benefits for your children of traveling early, and I'm going to link an article in the description about the benefits of travel for your children, and they ring true especially internationally when there's so many new concepts and pieces of language to expose them to and get them learning.
Bottom line is, don't wait. If you have little kids and you are thinking of coming to Mexico, come.
So the next question is, what should I know about driving in Mexico?
Driving down here is a little bit like the Wild West. They kind of make their own rules, and everybody just kind of seems to know what they are. But since you don't know what they are, we're going to clue you in on some of those.
The rules are very similar, however, they're not followed as consistently or enforced as consistently. Everybody always talks about the topes who have driven in Mexico, and the topes are the speed bumps. They are not your United States speed bumps. They are often unmarked, they are often the size of a small mountain and can break your axle, and you have to be on the lookout all the time. They will come out of nowhere.
Yeah, honestly, I like having a vehicle in front of me because when they start slowing down, I know that there's a tope. And believe it or not, they will put them on the highways. They're just in the middle of wherever.
And there are other hazards on the roads besides topes. There are a lot of potholes depending on where you are, and there are animals too. Stray dogs, cows,
Burros,
horses,
you name it.
Chickens. You
Even
never really know.
Even some goats. On the 2-lane highway, when you're driving, it's a good idea to straddle the shoulder whenever possible, even if you don't see any oncoming traffic. You'll actually see people in front of you doing this, and you'll probably be wondering to yourself, why are they doing this? And the reason that they do this is, like I said, people will pass over a solid yellow line or even a double yellow line, over a hill or around a corner, and if you are over to the side because you're straddling the shoulder, that gives them room to pass. And speaking of passing, if somebody comes up behind you and puts on their left blinker, they're telling you they want to pass you. If you put on your right blinker, you're telling them, go ahead and pass me. All right? And obviously, if you want to pass somebody, you can come up behind them and put your left blinker on and tell them, hey, I want to get past you. So these are the unwritten rules of the road, I guess is a good way to put it.
There is a pretty extensive toll road system in Mexico, and if you're looking at a map, the toll roads are shown with a D after the name. So coming down, crossing the border from Texas, you'll see 57, but you'll also see 57D, and 57D is the toll road.
And the toll roads are actually pretty decent. Some of them are really nice, and they are maintained by the government. They also have what are called the Green Angels.
Angeles Verdes.
which is something that you actually pay for as part of your toll for using the toll road. So if you have a breakdown or a flat or anything, you can call a number and the Green Angels will come to your rescue.
As a general rule, the closer that you get to a city center in Mexico, the more narrow and tight turns you will encounter, because a lot of these cities are colonial era and they were not built for large trucks and large vehicles, and sometimes there's vehicles parked on both sides of the road, which can make turns very tight. So that's just something to be aware of as you're coming into cities.
And when you get to intersections in these cities, they're usually not marked at all. There's no yield sign, there's no stop sign, there's no right-of-way sign. People kind of take turns, and for the most part it's an honor system where people actually take turns, but it doesn't always happen that way, and inevitably there will be some guy on a motorcycle that just kind of jets through the intersection, or pedestrians will just walk out in front of you without even thinking twice about it. So be aware of that, take your time on the intersections, and before you know it, guys, you guys are going to be driving in Mexico like an old pro. You get used to it. It's not impossible, it's just different. The next question we're frequently asked, is there dispersed or wild camping in Mexico?
Right, and the answer is different for Baja and the interior of Mexico. So Baja, the answer is 100% yes. In all of Mexico, the beaches are public land, and so if you can access a beach, you can camp on it.
Right, and in the interior of Mexico, you're going to be harder pressed to find wild camping. It does exist. You can look on iOverlander. Oftentimes it's not recommended, but there are campgrounds throughout all of interior Mexico that you can find where you can pay a nominal fee and usually have access to a secure area that has often showers and a flat level legal place to park.
Absolutely, and oftentimes even a little restaurant there too. It's very common. And you pay by the person in Mexico typically, but we pay as little as 100 pesos a night for the three of us, which is $5 US. And then another thing that you need to know is that it is culturally acceptable to spend the night as an overlander at places in Mexico that you wouldn't in the United States. For example, hotel parking lots, restaurant parking lots, gas station parking lots. And so if you patronize a business, it's not weird to say, and hey, by the way, can we camp here overnight?
All right, the next topic is water.
That's right. So a question that we get asked a lot is, should I be worried about the drinking water in Mexico?
And the answer to that question is no, not the drinking water. Now, don't ever drink the tap water. Even the locals never drink the tap water in Mexico.
It's a common myth that somehow the Mexican gastrointestinal system is able to handle the
like it's
water.
been fortified or something.
Yeah, the water that comes out of the tap. But like I said, it's a myth. That's not true. Nobody, not even the Mexicans, drink the water that comes out of the tap. And that's because there isn't a water treatment system in Mexico the way that we have it in the United States. And that water is not for drinking.
Right, and bottled water is available everywhere. There are some other things you should know about water here in Mexico. For example, many of the restaurants, you're going to get ice in your drink. Now, the more established restaurants and any popular restaurants, they're going to use bottled water to make that ice.
Or even just buy bags of ice.
So that's not a problem. But if you go to a little tiny stand in a little tiny town that maybe doesn't have access to that, they might be using tap water to either make their ice or even wash their vegetables.
Before we come into Mexico every time, we take Culturel, which is a probiotic, and you just take it once a day. And there's some disagreement about whether those probiotics do anything, but I can tell you that we've always used them, and we have had very rare gastrointestinal problems in Mexico.
Right, and isn't there some kind of drop or something that you use on the fruit? Can you talk about that?
So here in the major grocery stores, and I've actually seen it in the United States too, there's a little dropper bottle that you can get, and you just put 5 drops in a bowl of water with your fruits and vegetables that you've purchased, and that takes away any issues with chemicals on the leaves or anything that might cause your system trouble. And we have never had issues with the fruits and vegetables that we buy as long as I use those droplets. And if you want to learn more about food and water while overlanding, including international considerations, I'm going to link to an article I've written about food and water for overlanders.
The next question we want to cover is about COVID-19 and any restrictions in Mexico for COVID.
Yeah, it's really similar to what we've gone through in the United States, but what you need to know is that every state and every city has different regulations.
For the most part, if you are outdoors, you don't need to wear a mask, but if you are indoors, you do have to wear a mask. And definitely at all restaurants, you need to have a mask on until you are seated, and then you can take it off once you're seated to enjoy your meal.
Right, so like I said, pretty similar to what we've been through in the United States, with the only difference being that in a lot of places in the US, restrictions have been lifted, and in Mexico, those restrictions are still in place. There's also a lot of hand sanitizer and a lot of temperature checks.
Everywhere you go.
Yeah, almost every establishment you go into, you're required to use hand sanitizer, or at least there's a sign and a bottle up. And then in a lot of places, there's literally someone standing at the door with a thermometer taking temperatures going in. Then as far as the borders go, when you cross into Mexico, you don't have to do anything that has anything to do with COVID. And so it's just the same documentation, the same questions as there's always been. There's no tests, no questions about COVID, no requirements whatsoever to get from the United States into Mexico when you're driving. So how do you feel? Is some of that weight and that fear removed from you now that we've answered a lot of these questions? Well, there's one more. If you're ready to come to Mexico, we're often asked, where should I start if it's my first time visiting Mexico? So let's talk a little bit about Baja, Mexico and the interior of Mexico, because they are different worlds.
Completely different worlds.
And I think that I would say that if you're still a little bit uncomfortable about the whole idea of Mexico, maybe you don't know any Spanish, consider starting in Baja.
From an overlanding standpoint, Baja is a great place to cut your teeth for international overland travel. It is really an extension of California
It feels like it.
that speaks some Spanish.
Yeah.
But you are in a foreign country, and you do get to deal with the border crossing type stuff, and you get to experience different cultures. It's not what you're going to experience in the interior of Mexico, however. Like Brittany said, that is a completely different world. From a documentation standpoint, Baja is actually easier than interior Mexico as well. So if you're starting in Baja, you don't even need your temporary import permit for your vehicle. All you need is your own tourist card to get into the country.
Yeah, Baja is built for tourists, and so they're used to English-speaking tourists. There are so many camping options in Baja because it's a skinny piece of land, and there's beaches on either side that are open to you for camping. That's really awesome. And so you get all the good food in Baja, the fish tacos, so it's a good place to start. But interior Mexico is very different, and we prefer interior Mexico. We went to interior Mexico though before we ever went to Baja, and interior Mexico has our hearts. There is so much culture here. There's the history from Spain and France, and it all kind of melds together from the indigenous people as well for a really rich culture of wonderful people, really good food, beautiful cities, and we just love it here. But it's a big country, so it is hard to know where to start. We would recommend that you go to the groups like On the Road in Mexico, that you would read our archives. We'll link to all of our Baja Peninsula articles and our interior Mexico. Watch our YouTube videos.
Hopefully we've answered all your major questions and you're ready to come to Mexico. We are excited for you. And if you have any questions at all that we did not cover in this video, go ahead and ask it in the comments. We will take the time to respond to you. And if we have enough questions, we might even do a part 2.
Thanks so much, you guys, for tuning in. Please give us a like, subscribe, and be ready for the next video as our adventure in Mexico continues.